Hello and welcome to the Music Survival Guide podcast, episode 7, I believe. I was going to say unlucky for some, I don't know why. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing really good, mate. How are you?
I'm all right, yeah. I'm, as it goes, about to go on holiday. Not that anyone listening will notice.
Yeah,
it should be
because
seamless.
you will have gone 5 weeks before this podcast comes out.
Oh, you're betraying our schedule. I don't think it's 5 weeks. So, Joe, what have you been up to since we last chatted?
So, over the past few days, I've been working on another mix for an artist called Hayley Klinkhammer, who is an artist I'd thoroughly recommend people to check out. Not only because she's crazy talented, and I enjoy, working with her on a variety of stuff, but she's an artist that's really, really crushed the whole YouTube algorithm thing. That's a really awful way of explaining that. But so she uploads like covers on YouTube, and some of them have got like millions and millions of hits, and then she can release her music like on the side, her original stuff, and she's kind of built an organic following. So it leans on some of the stuff that we've been talking about in previous podcast episodes. What
Joe's trying to say is if you want to know how to YouTube as a musician, she's a good person to look at.
Oh, 100%. She's someone who I really hope at some point we can get on as a guest, because I think she'd be really interesting to talk to.
Let's do it. So, Joe, what are we talking about this week?
So, this week we are going to be talking about the thing that I firmly believe a lot of bands start for this reason, and it is to get on stage and rock your little heart out. And so we are going to be talking about how to get gigs.
How to get gigs. I was going to say in 2019 and make it sound really gimmicky, but that dates it really quickly.
No, we're just going to... How to get gigs in
how to
modern
generically get gigs in the modern era.
In the modern era.
Ancient times here. So, there are many, many methods of getting gigs. Some of them a bit more old school, some of them a bit more 21st century. And I guess maybe in the modern age, the obvious place to start is meeting people in your local scene. So that takes many, many forms. The obvious way is actually going to gigs and meeting people face to face, but then you can also do it on Facebook. So there's obviously Facebook groups dedicated to local music scenes and interests of various sorts and things like that. Yeah,
there's a lot to be said for meeting people, in person. I think we say like this all the time, is that some of the strongest connections I've personally made, and I know a lot of other musician friends and promoters, managers, label people, you name it. If you ask them, what connection that they have that kind of launched their career or made them make a big step in it, it was certainly ones they made face-to-face or person-to-person. So, yeah, it's something I'd really emphasize is actually showing your face at gigs, introducing yourself, and just ingratiating yourself in the local scene is a really, really good way of getting your face known, and it helps you out when you're looking for gigs.
So there is, like many things in life, a right and a wrong way to go about this. I'd say a great place to start is if you know a band in the local area and you really like them, and your style of music isn't dissimilar. It sort of meets and fits with them, like you'd work together on a bill. Talk to them. It's a great place to start. Is to go, how do you get gigs? I mean, you couldn't ask it immediately, but is there a support slot available? And you can just generally chat to them. I mean, the way to start anything like this is not to go in for the kill, as it were, and just go straight to the jugular. It's to generally chat and introduce yourself, and say I'm in a band or whatever it is. Because if you go straight to, hey, can we gig with you? The answer is probably going to be no, or I need to know more about you. These things tend to happen naturally rather than in a forced kind of way, if that makes sense. It is in my mind.
I think you've got to give the impression that you give a You can't kind of go in and say to people, oh, or give the impression that it's just a one-way thing. I'm coming here to get the thing that I want, and you're going to give it to me, because that's not the way it works. It's all kind of got to be mutual. I'd personally recommend this tactic. So we're talking about meeting people in person, but maybe to try give them the old 1-2, which is if you kind of do your research, you find there's a local gig in your area of a band who you think you'd work well on a support slot. Do yourself a favour, once you've researched it, and say the gig's on the Friday, on the Monday, drop the band an email, message, DM, whatever you want, and just kind of go, hey, I'm Joe, I play in this band. If you've got links to your music, great. But for this, we're assuming you're kind of like a new band. You might not have links. Maybe you have a demo that can also get you a long way, and just say, I'm coming down to your show on Friday, looking forward to it. Would be great to have a chat with you after your set.
100%.
And I think you're really setting yourself up for a big win there.
Yes, because you've already on the email or however you've communicated with them digitally, you've got over that sort of initial awkward step, and so you can go, when you chat to them, you can go, hi, I'm Phil. We've already chatted, basically. So you've already kind of gotten in. That's not quite so awkward. I don't know. That's the way I put it anyway.
No, I completely agree with that, because I think there's, for as much as there are, loads of extrovert musicians who are more than happy to do that, we'd be daft to ignore the fact that it can be an awkward conversation. You don't kind of want to go up to someone and go, hi, I'm in a band. Or you kind of do small talk and they're kind of going, well, what's this person want? Whereas if you kind of introduce yourself as, I'm in this band, not necessarily, like you say, going for the kill, but you kind of give a bit of context to who you are. And once you've done that, all you have to do is go, hi, I'm Joe, and we've been chatting over email or in DMs for the last 3 days. And you've instantly kind of got that
connection,
that conversation starter and that context without having to awkwardly go, oh, well, by the way, I'm in a band. It's just a lot more organic.
Oh, yes. The other thing to say about meeting bands who are gigging is you've got to be respectful of what they are doing. So the most stressful part of a gig for any band, especially in like a pub or a kind of smaller local gig, is the setup and the set down. So probably the worst way you could approach them is the second they have finished playing, because that band will be focused on packing down their stuff as fast as humanly possible whilst avoiding the band that are setting up. And I've seen people sort of wander up to a bandmate and chat to them whilst they're trying to pack away. It's not a good time. And if you want to ingratiate yourself with them, then that is not the way to go about it.
You could go even one step further. I don't think I personally, when I was playing in bands, would have loved it if, so we've done the plan of, send them an email, introduce yourself, have a talk. And as soon as they finish the set, go to the person who you know who it is. So don't know what his name is, John. And just go, hey, John, I'm Joe. We've been chatting by email. Can I give you a hand packing down?
Ooh.
Can I do it? Can I take cases? Do you want me to carry stuff to a car or whatever? You'll quickly find, I think, that you'll start getting gig offers if you become that guy who is, the local live scene saviour.
That is a great call. It's a great way to meet people, is to help them do something practical that they're trying to do quickly.
Yeah, because not only are you, it's that guy who seemed quite interesting, you're the guy who helped us pack down. And ultimately, if you want to gig with them, if you're showing you're willing to pack down and help out and muck in, what better reference for getting on the same bill as them, because they know, that guy's perfectly happy. He's not one who complains about packing down or leaves his stuff around or is untidy. It's perfect reference for actually playing a show with them.
So I guess you've got to remember and consider that when people are looking for, in all sorts of areas of the music industry, but in gigging, when people are looking for people to sort of gig with, it's partly, does this band sound good and do we gel with them musically? But frankly, probably a lot more of it is this band a faff to gig with, or are they actually being helpful?
Yeah, somewhat controversially, if we were going to percentage it, I'd say it's 80% kind of a mixture of personality, admin. What's the phrase I'm looking for?
Everything that's not music.
No, yeah, it's everything that kind of isn't music. It's it's the logistics. That's the one. So I'd say it's kind of controversially. I'd say it's 80% admin, logistics, personality, because those are kind of the key things. As long as you really fit within a genre, there's, especially kind of if you're looking for your first gig, the threshold in the nicest way possible probably isn't that high for your musical quality, but what will get you far and will allow you to, have a bad show or things go wrong and you will continue to get more gigs and people will give you second chances, is if you're the guy who turns up on time or is the person who's willing to help out or is always like the best communicator, just a nice person to be around.
Be a decent human being and things will come your way.
And I think you can demonstrate those really, really easily through email and going to actually meet them in person and helping out. And it's safe to say, I feel like it's a thing we haven't touched upon, is buying someone a drink goes a really long way. Like, it sounds really daft.
It's true.
But once you've kind of shaken hands, given them a hand, just go, oh, can I buy you a beer? And I want to like talk a bit more about music.
No one is more amenable to a beer than a musician after they've played a set.
Exactly.
So, I guess moving on, there are other methods of getting gigs, and some. The next one's quite a hard one. It's a lot of hard work, if I'm honest. Is cold contacting venues. So this is, if you know, I don't know, 7 or 8, that's quite a lot maybe, venues within your area, is going, I would like to play at, I don't know, the Lion's Head pub. Sure, why not? It's a very generic name. And they have lots of gigs on Fridays and Saturdays, and you can cold contact them and say, I would basically love to be considered as a support band, because a lot of the time local venues are looking for support bands. I would caution that you certainly need some kind of musical output to show them in your cold contact. If you don't have anything, this may not be the option for you, because they need to know what you're like.
Yeah, that is a major caveat. The only thing I would say to add to that is I wouldn't stress about it being studio recordings. If you have a good live recording or even just a really good home demo, there's a fair chance they kind of get the picture of what kind of... They're not necessarily like a radio promoter would be looking to play your stuff or, is looking for the next Foo Fighters or whatever. They just need to see, if you're a metal act, okay, I can put you on a metal night. Or if you're a rock act, I can put you on with these other people. It's more they just kind of need a genre idea. I know certainly in a lot of venues that are kind of playing beginner bands or bands that are starting out, it's more about what genre they fit in rather than the quality of their songs, so to speak.
And you should, if you're sort of up for doing this, what you can make clear in your email is that you are up for last-minute cancellation support slots. So there's often times where bands, someone gets ill or, I don't know, a van breaks down or whatever it is, and they're suddenly like, oh gosh, we need a support band for tomorrow night. What do we do? If you can be sort of, sounds dramatic, their saviour, if you can be there as a band to fill in that hole in their support slot, then you have gone up in their estimation so much. You are a helpful person or a helpful band. Mm-hmm.
I also think it's important when kind of styling out your email or writing out your email.
Styling out.
I don't know. My brain's on about 5%. It's on low power mode essentially at the moment.
How do you style out an email?
I don't know. I'm going to find out and I'm going to get back to you next week.
Excellent.
So when you're writing out your email, I think it's important to personalize it and maybe do a little bit of research. Don't go full Minority Report. and find out their blood type and where the person lives, that's just going to come across as creepy. But if you kind of find out who the email's going to, so for example, it just might be thelionshead@gmail.com, but if you find out the bloke's name's Steve, who is the person who answers all the emails or runs the night, it should be something along the lines like, oh, hi, Steve, I'm in band XYZ. We're kind of similar to these kind of nights that you've put on previously. Here's our demo or live stuff. And then same as, I'm pretty sure we've covered it in other episodes, is kind of have a link to an email signature. So it's kind of got, a link to your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, maybe an EPK, like an electronic press kit.
Ooh.
I mean, that's kind of getting into your more higher tier stuff. But if you can provide as much info and leave your phone number on it, always leave your phone number on it.
Look professional but friendly.
Yeah, that's it. It's professional but approachable is the...
And you've got, as Joe said, you've got to provide links to things like your Facebook page and all sorts. Basically as much kind of social media stuff as you've got linked to it, because you want to make it as easy as possible for this person to find out about you in whatever way they want to. Mm-hmm. So if they want to know how many Facebook followers you have, they've got to be able to find out very quickly. So a click from an email is a great time.
There's a good approach to have as well is think about it from the perspective of if you were putting on a show yourself and you had a band you've never heard of contact you, what would be all the questions you'd want to ask them to be able to run the night or, get enough information to want to book them and include those, like even write them down, type them out and include all those answers within your email. I think that's a really foolproof method of making sure you come across with all the right info.
So another kind of avenue I've got actually written down is gig promoters. And now I sort of think about it, is actually probably a very similar method to cold contacting venues. So these are people who, for a living or maybe for a side living, put on gigs. So the more bands that they know and the more bands that they can meet, kind of the better. You can meet these people very easily actually at gigs as well. So if you know that it's, I don't know, such and such promotions presents this gig, then you know that it's some kind of gig promoter who's put it on. And usually whoever that is going to be there. So you can actually quite easily, when you're chatting to the band, find out who it is, and then you can get into a conversation with this person and move it on a stage.
This is definitely an example of the power of referrals. And I'd kind of apply this thinking about it to the previous thing of cold emailing venues. Is there's so much power in being able to say, hey, if we played with people X at this show and we're aware that they did a show with your promotions company, just wanted to kind of, introduce ourselves and say, hey, like those kind of referrals and person-to-person interactions where that person can... It doesn't have to be something massively flowery. You can just say, hey, we played on the same bill as one of the other acts that you work with, just introducing ourselves in case you have gigs that come up in this area, and this is how, this is a link to our music and all the stuff that we've mentioned in the previous little section.
I mean, yeah, Joe's right. I mean, a lot of this kind of thing is the power of referrals. So really what we're kind of throwing out here is options and ideas, especially for new bands, but maybe bands sort of early on in their gigging career who don't necessarily know where to go to get these gigs. But when you start to gig a few times and you get a bit of a reputation, hopefully a good one, you'll be offered more and more. So people will actually start coming to you and saying, especially like gig promoters, and going, we've got this night coming up, would you like to play? That is a great position to be in as a band.
Mm-hmm. I can only speak for Liverpool, and it was the same as when I was living in Manchester as well, is there seems to be almost tastemakers in most cities' scenes, especially kind of in indie rock and kind of the indie pop stuff that I work in, that a case, for example, I went for a meeting with someone who contacted me through an ad that I was running, and the bloke was from London or whatever.
Hashtag London.
And he just said, "Oh, do you know so and so?" And it's this one band member that I bless him, I love him, and I work with his band, and I love working and producing with them. But everywhere I go, that person gets brought up, and they go, "Oh, you know so and so. Oh, you know so and so." So if you can identify that one person, make sure you are the friendliest person possible to them, and buy them a beer and get to know them, because they're most likely they're the person you can name drop for a promoter and go, "Oh, hey, so and so from this band recommended us," and that person will get you through so many doors.
The power of name dropping.
The power, yeah, it is kind of a business where it's all.
Oh yeah, it's who you know, isn't it?
Yeah, it is who you know rather than what you know. I mean, you still have to have a base layer of what you know, but to open doors, it's who you know.
Helpful.
So going from what we were saying before about people having side hustles, even for their band, or even like as part of their job in setting up gigs and promoting stuff, there's obviously an option to set up your own. So become your own booking agent and set up your own gigs.
It's an option, but there's 1,000,001 issues with it.
Yeah.
And many challenges to overcome.
It's not something I'd advise, and I think Phil would concur, if you're at the stage where you're trying to get your first few gigs.
Very much so.
It's going to be more stress than it's worth. So the massive thing that I think of is, especially if you're going to be doing a multi-band bill, then your responsibility also lies with the other acts and making sure they're on stage, and then you have to liaise with the venue. And if you're inexperienced in this stuff, things will go wrong. Things will go wrong. It's just part and parcel of it. But the people who are doing it have maybe had plenty of experience of working under someone or shadowing someone who's done it before, and they can kind of see the fires before they need to be put out. If you're doing it for the first time, it's something that, will come at you thick and fast.
Yes. So if you're in some Lincolnshire village and you're wanting to start a local scene, I would heavily suggest to you that it is easier to travel with your band to the nearest city and go to that scene and join that than try and start something new.
Yeah.
It's a faff, but it's a lot easier.
It's something, I'll admit, I don't know all too much about how you'd get into it. I think a lot of people I know, how they get into it is they are in bands themselves, and they kind of, watch the scene and they kind of go, "Oh, there's a gap in the market that I think we can fill."
Yeah.
Maybe if you do want to kind of get into that, is again reach out or meet a promoter of someone of a gig night that you like, and just ask them if you can kind of volunteer with them for the night, like offer to take tickets on the door and stuff like that. And is another great way to meet loads of people and meet new bands and kind of get your word out there a little bit. Maybe is to volunteer at some gigs. That's maybe an option. It's a really difficult one.
It starts to become a thing of itself, aside from sort of being in a band that gets gigs. Being a promoter is just a whole different area to get into.
Yeah, I think it'd be very difficult to concentrate on the actual playing of the gig if you're panicking about who's on the door collecting tickets, who's, is the bar well stocked enough? Is the support band going to turn up? Have they got their own gear? Who's making sure people are on and off? Who's making sure the band are on at the right time? Is the sound man going to turn up? When's the sound man going to be paid? It's the reason why it's a job. I don't think you'd be able to actually enjoy the experience of playing live if you're trying to juggle that many plates.
Very much so. So on the topic of sort of last minute gigs and support slots, a Facebook group I'm going to recommend to you, I think it's a group, or is it a page, is one called Bands Promoters Gigs UK, which is obviously very UK centric. I would politely caution that there a lot happens in that group, and it caters to a lot of genres. But I would honestly recommend just joining it and seeing what is in there and what opportunities might arise. Just a thought, really.
Yeah, there are very similar pages, I think, for most cities. So depending on where you are with the right research, I think you can find the right group. And I'm involved in a few of them, and I always see posts like band dropped out, need a 15-minute set from a band that can get to this venue. For a sound check for 6, we'll pay X amount. So if you're kind of eagle-eyed enough on those pages and are an active member, then there's always opportunities on there.
Yes. So, that was, I guess, a phrase I've heard around and about is a advice buffet. So there is something there that will cater to more or less anybody. As we've said, it's one of those things where it's a who you know kind of thing. So the more people you meet, the more opportunities you will get, and the more you can get recommended. Is that the word? I don't know.
Referred.
Referred. I knew it began with R. So it's just kind of, I guess, a case of getting the ball rolling. Something we didn't mention, which I don't really know why we didn't, is I would generally suggest starting with smaller gig slots. So like a 15-minute set rather than an hour set, just to get into the flow of it as a band. A bit late to mention that, but I have now.
No, it's a very valid point. Kind of, yeah. Don't stress yourself out with thinking of 7-minute live intros. Make a really concise, tight 15-minute set. Go do that, build yourself a good reputation, and then the bigger sets and bigger opportunities will come. Don't run before you can walk, I think is a phrase that comes to mind.
Oh, get you with your phrases.
I know. And speaking of phrases, I'm going to make it a thing. Here's my top 3 summary of, I think, things we've covered in this episode. So, in at number 1, I feel like we should have some music with this. I'm going to put some in the edit. So at number 1 is, I'd say, go out and meet people in person, show your face, take a genuine mutual interest in their band and their music, and don't make it feel like a one-way transaction. Make it feel like you're genuinely interested and form a bond that way, and you'll be able to ingratiate yourself in the scene much quicker. A second one is to get a referral from other bands and promoters when approaching other bands about support slots or promotion or anything to do with gigs. So if you know a band that's gotten in with someone, then, you know, it even just helps with introductions of kind of go, part of that small talk when you meet someone is, oh, hey, yeah, I know Matt from that band. Oh, you know Matt? Yeah, you played with them. You're instantly in and you've got a conversation started and you're on the topic of music and you can kind of work your way in that way. And finally is always do your research. I don't think it hurts to kind of go into these conversations kind of knowing who you're talking to, especially when you're talking to venues, and just make people feel worthwhile. Don't make them feel like they're just someone else that you've just spammed for no reason. Again, it's all about making a genuine connection and building proper bonds with people in the industry, and that will help you get really far.
Learn and you will go far. I don't know why that phrase came to me.
Well,
sure.
On that note.
You can get in contact with me if you should so choose. I can talk honest. If you want to, via email, phil@vorticesoundstudios.com. And following on from last week, I now have an autoresponder set up. Hurrah.
How exciting. Well, I know what I'm going to be doing as soon as we finish recording this episode.
Oh dear.
And you can reach me at joe@nevisaudio.com.
You can reach us both at musicsurvivalguide@gmail.com, our very official sounding email address. And we have a Facebook group, which is called the Music Survival Guide Podcast.
Amazing. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave us a review on wherever you get your podcasts. It really, really helps us and allows us to make further podcasts and hopefully get like some awesome interviews in the future. So
say nice things.
So yeah, if you could say nice things, that'd be great. So until next time, it's goodbye from me.
Ciao from me.
That's going to be your thing. Mine's top 3 years ago.